Hey everyone, and welcome to The Foundry by Forge College. Now, if you caught our last explainer, Connecting the Dots, you know we explored some of the massive historical shifts that really laid the groundwork for decentralized apps. Well, today, we're zooming in on the exact technical spark that kind of woke the internet up. We're talking about the shift from static, lifeless pages to the dynamic, user-driven platforms we use every single day. It's a completely fascinating evolution, so let's just dive right in.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, posters to conversations. Second, the mechanics of interactivity. Third, the feature ladder. Fourth, the centralization trade-off. And fifth, rethinking the conversation.
All right, Section 1, Posters to Conversations, the mental model.
To really wrap our heads around this evolution, I want you to think of Web 1 like a static poster on a brick wall. It was strictly one-way communication, right? The server had absolutely zero memory of who you were, and if something broke, it just failed closed. I mean, we've all been there. You fill out this massive, endless registration form, you finally hit submit, and boom, the page reloads and everything vanishes because you missed one tiny field. It was agonizing. But Web 2? Web 2 is an ongoing conversation. It uses session management to actually maintain context about you. You're no longer just staring at a wall. You're in an active, two-way dialogue.
Moving on to Section 2, the mechanics of interactivity, building the engine.
So, how do you actually build this interactive engine? Well, it starts with client-side scripting. By executing code, usually JavaScript, directly inside the browser, we can update the screen without having to fetch a whole new HTML document from scratch. It's kind of like giving your browser its very own brain. Suddenly, that frustrating network lag just vanishes, and it's replaced by this incredible feeling of immediacy.
But you know, a brain isn't much use without a memory, right? And that brings us to server-side state. These are mechanisms like cookies or tokens that allow the server to actually remember your identity and your context across multiple requests. Without this, the server treats you like a complete stranger every single time you click a new link. Server-side state gives the server a memory, preventing your digital conversation from losing its coherence and, thankfully, stopping you from having to log in over and over again.
So how do this brain and memory actually work together? It happens in a simple three-step cycle called asynchronous HTTP, or AJAX. Step 1, you, the user, trigger an event, like hitting a key. Step 2, an asynchronous request quietly fetches data in the background. And step 3, the browser executes a partial view update. Imagine you're staring at a chat or a comment box, right? And you see those three little dots bouncing to show your friend is typing? That is literally this exact cycle in action. The entire web page doesn't have to refresh to show you that. It just pulls that tiny bit of data asynchronously and updates one specific spot on your screen.
Now, what's really interesting is how these individual mechanics stack together to create the features we literally take for granted today. JavaScript gives us quick, snappy UI updates. Ajax pulls data quietly, letting your drafts auto-save in the background. Cookies provide the server memory needed for your customized feed. And WebSockets, they open up a two-way channel that makes live chat and real-time gaming possible. It's the whole shebang.
Let's look at Section 3, the feature ladder, social consequences.
Trace this evolution with me for a second. Back in 1995, you essentially had a static blog. You read it, and that was it. Nothing more to do. By 2000, we see comments added, basic interactivity. By 2005, Ajax updates make those comments smooth in real time without reloading the page. By 2010, platforms have enough memory to introduce persistent profiles and follower graphs. And by 2015, they're analyzing all that data to give you a highly addictive personalized feed. Notice how each and every step added more user-generated content and richer behavioral data. A simple online diary transformed into a global social platform.
And that timeline reveals a core truth. Feature ladders create incentives. Small, seemingly innocent features like adding a like button or a comment section rapidly accumulate into complex social graphs and massive data analytics pipelines. This is absolutely crucial to understand. In fact, students in our Forge College learning programs often study these exact platform growth patterns to truly grasp how Web 2 expanded at such a breakneck pace. The technology quite literally incentivized its own growth.
Which brings us to Section 4, the centralization trade-off, architectural costs.
Of course, there's a catch. There's always a hidden architectural cost to all this personalized magic. The foundational principle here is that statefulness inherently centralizes responsibility. To rapidly provide you with a tailored feed, platforms had to pull all the servers, all the data, and all the control into a massive centralized hub.
So, the crucial point
is that this level of interactivity demands certain things from an organization. The centralization trade-off requires massive persistent data storage. It requires active content moderation, because users are now generating the content. It requires coherent identity systems, so we actually know who is who, and it requires centralized analytics for product tuning. Building a system that demands this much coordination inherently pushes the organization running it to retain very, very tight control over the data and the infrastructure.
There's a quote that frames this perfectly. Once you build a system that benefits from centralized data, organizational incentives push toward retaining control. And look, this concentration of power isn't some malicious plot. It is simply the mechanical reality of stateful Web 2 architecture. If the servers have to remember everything to keep the site running, well, the entity owning those servers holds the keys to the kingdom.
And finally, Section 5, Rethinking the Conversation, Decentralized Future. And this brilliantly illustrates a deeply provocative question. Can the conversation be restructured so each participant keeps its own memory, without a single central store? Think about it. If centralized control is just a byproduct of Web 2's design, what happens if the network itself holds the memory? That question right there is the very foundation for Web 3.
So, as you navigate the internet from now on, try applying this mental model to every app you use. Ask yourself, where does the logic run? How is the context preserved? And how are the updates delivered? The answers will tell you exactly who holds the power in that system. Well, that wraps it up for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I highly encourage you to visit forge.college to continue your Web3 exploration and really dive deeper into the mechanics of the decentralized web. Keep questioning the architecture, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next one.